I'm very excited today. I have with me on my channel Jeff Stubbs and Aristide Ganci. Good evening, guys. Thank you very much for being here.
Good to be here.
Good evening. Yeah.
May I introduce you, both of you. You are from Thermo Fisher Scientific. Jeff Stubbs is Environment and Food Safety Senior Business Development Manager for EMEA, for Thermo. And Aristide Ganci is Product Manager, Environment and Food Safety Business Segment. Thank you very much. I'm very honored for being here, guys.
Honestly, it's good to chat with you, George. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Before we start, we have a lot of things to discuss about thermo, environment, PFAS, all those hot stuff. But I would really like to start with you guys. I mean, tell us a few words about you, what you are doing, what is your current position in thermo, and what is your experience with PFAS or the ORBITRAPs?
Okay. Shall I go first, Ari?
Sure. Yeah, you go first.
Okay, so George, I'm currently functioning as you said, the Senior Business Development Manager for Environment and Food Safety in EMEA here in Thermo Fisher Scientific. I've got quite a bit of experience in the environmental industry. I started in the water industry a long time ago now. I think it was 2001, and I've worked through those labs and seen hot topics come and go, but I would probably say not one as big as the PFAS problem that we've got right at the moment. After a few roles, I joined Thermo in 2018, working on LCMS and ORBITRAPs with as an account manager, and I've ended up working as an environmental business development manager. And one of the topics the biggest topic of concern is PFAS, and of course this is where our some of our technology, like the ORBITRAP, starts fitting in to routine labs that are let's say that are challenged with the PFAS problem. So lots and lots of talking about PFAS these days, put it that way.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. Aristide?
Yes, thanks, George. So as you mentioned, I'm the product manager in EFS business segment. And prior to my current position, I was in Thermo in the lab myself. So I was doing analysis. I was working on PFAS as one of the big topics, the hot topics. It's probably been about 2 years in the lab, just on PFAS analysis, different platforms, different solutions. And prior to Thermo, so my background is in food science and biotechnology. And actually I came first in contact with the ORBITRAP back in 2012, I would say. It was my master thesis. I was working in a contract testing labs in Germany at the time, and I was developing a method on a triple quad. And they actually just acquired their first ORBITRAP at the time. And I was really fascinated by that technology, what you can do. They were doing pesticide screening, running hundreds of compounds in complex matrices. And that's where my passion for the ORBITRAP started. And I said, I have to do something with it. And I applied for a PhD shortly after, which was an industrial PhD involving Thermo Fisher Scientific in Bremen and the University of Birmingham for brominated flame retardants in environmental samples at the time. And so this brought me where I'm today. And in my current role, so I'm a product manager, not only of a specific product, but let's say more of a solution. So hardware, analytical methods, and everything which goes with it.
That's great. And from your experience, I realized that you faced the switch from triple quadruple to ORBITRAP, which is the first hand of experience of a great technology to your hands. So before we start with talking about the PFAS, I would need briefly from you guys that always, I mean, not only in Greece, I think in the Europe, and while we're talking about PFAS, we are always thinking about ORBITRAPs or the mass spectrometry or whatever. But you have a complete portfolio, the complete workflow for all the PFAS environment and food solutions, right? I mean, it's not only the hardware, I mean, the ORBITRAP, it's also the software, it's also the sample preparation, right? Do you want to tell us a few words about that?
Yeah. I think the PFAS problem is an ever evolving and moving target. So we at Thermo in CMD, we've got some solutions that are constantly evolving as well, and they're evolving not just for the regulations, but also where PFAS are being found. So like you say, from water to food, soils, and this is all happening like right now. So it's quite a nice time to be talking about this. And the idea is that if we don't have an end-to-end solution, we'll be designing ones that are, because that's what our customers, that's what our fraternity, our PFAS challengers like us are facing as well. So you're right. From start to finish is hopefully from the sample to the report and everything in between. That's what we're hearing the market needs, and that's what we're listening to our customers to try and achieve, and get that challenge taken out of their hands as much as we can, because we want to help make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer, right?
Yeah, that's the message. Yeah, right. Okay, so PFAS is a very hot topic nowadays. I mean, the recent years, I mean, presents one of the biggest analytical challenges right now. What makes ORBITRAP technology the best fit for tackling this problem, and how does it compare to traditional quadrupoles or other mesh-based systems?
Do you want to go first, Ari?
Sure, yeah, I can start with that one. So obviously, if we look at triple quadruple, that's obviously still the gold standard for really targeted analysis, if you really need to go for really low levels. But ORBITRAP, what it brings as an advantage is really full scan capabilities. Full scan being said, you can do not only targeted analysis for regulatory purposes, you can do untargeted analysis. There's the option of doing a retrospective analysis. And you can really look also for unknown PFAS, which are coming up over the years. Industries are adapting, and novel compounds are coming out. So this being said, obviously the ORBITRAP has certain sets of properties which are really important in this field. It's obviously the high resolution. You can filter out, let's say, for example, complex matrices and interferences, which especially happen if you're looking at complex matrices.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the key thing here is, from what I understand, is the suspect screening, right? The targeted research, right? I mean, this is because of the high resolution of the ORBITRAPs, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So let's say our customers actually do a whole range of things that can be targeted on one hand side, as you mentioned. It can be targeted plus suspect screening. So you have a targeted list, but you're interested in some other compounds. And there's a third world, which is the untargeted world, where you initially don't necessarily know what you're looking for. And it untargeted can be divided into sample profiling. It's
okay.
That can be, you have a profile, you're looking for certain markers, or the really untargeted where you have no prior knowledge to what you're looking for. And then actually all of these worlds, mass resolution is an important point.
That's great. Jeff, what makes ORBITRAP the best fit here? I mean, what makes ORBITRAP the best player right now in PFAS?
It's a good question, George. Where I would say it's quite strong, and this is where I didn't even know this when I joined the business. There are always these challenges in these types of routine labs, where you have a list of compounds that you have to analyze, the targets, make sure you're compliant, your sample is compliant with them, and everybody can go home happy. But what about the other stuff that's not maybe in the target list, but might be of concern? The industries out there, they on the whole would look at a high-res system and say, oh, that must be millions and millions of dollars. You're going to need to have a really, really high level of education and expertise, years and years as a doctorate in mass spectrometry or whatever. And that's a lot of money and a lot of time for that instrument just to be sat there when we have an incident or something goes wrong. And what's happened over the years is that the ORBITRAP has been able to, and I'll use the phrase from one of my customers. He would say, you know, the ORBITRAP allows us, a high-res system, should I say, needs to earn its keep, as in, it can't just be sat there because it's very expensive to just do nothing until it needs to be. So what we're looking for is something that can give us, let's say, triple quad grade data, accreditation grade, validation grade data that can tick off the targeted lists of compounds, pesticides, whatever, regulated PFAS in this example, but also get more data per injection by using the high resolution accurate mass, some of this retrospective capability to look at things that we might not have wanted to look for at that precise moment that the sample was injected, but at the same time still be able to be compliant with those regulations. And where the ORBITRAP really surprised me was that there are labs out there, and there are a lot more now, but this was like 6-7 years ago, where they would be using these for routine. They're very stable, very, 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 very solid, just like a triple quad. But the amount of data that you can get out of them is massive. But actually, it's useful. Okay, so if you don't want to look for something that you don't want to, then you don't need to, and you can run it in a targeted way in full scan, but just look for those particular compounds of choice. So versatility is a big thing, which I think, but also two more things. One is the power of high resolution accurate mass. It's very much more advanced than maybe other techniques on the market, let's say, but also from a value perspective now, we're coming into this technology era where actually the ORBITRAPs are much more affordable for any lab. Okay, so then that accessibility increases and gives us the option to see more of these in these routine labs. And it just so happens that the PFAS nightmare that we are all under seems to tick a lot of boxes where the ORBITRAP sort of fits quite well, but not forgetting the sample prep, the LC side of things, the workflow, which we spoke about before. All of that's very important, but with the ORBITRAP technology at the forefront of getting those results out there on time.
Right. I mean, it's often I'm saying to the customers that the question is not, to look the data. I mean, to check on the data is how you look on the data, how you are going to check the data. What is your abilities or of the system, of the instrument? So, and especially right now, because we are facing, I think we are, let's say, in a time that before the evaluation of any new regulation about the PFAS, I'm checking also all the countries that right now they are discussing about increasing the number of PFAS or select other PFAS as well, or even the TFA to be as a parameter. So the whole discussion changed dramatically the last 2 years, the last 3 years. So, and while we're talking about, let's say, TFA, we often hear about isobaric interference in PFAS analysis, right? So can you explain why high-resolution mass spectrometry system is a game changer in resolving these compounds? And especially, what ORBITRAP enables users to gain indifference to other approaches?
Do you want to take that one, Ari, to start?
Yeah, sure. I can start with that one, yeah. So for isobaric interferences, which might happen because you have, let's say, similar molecules with similar masses in a complex sample mixture. Obviously, the ability to differentiate between one compound and the other, that's where really the exact mass of the orbitrap comes to its play. So distinguishing between, let's say, 4 or even 5 digits after after the dot, and positively identifying and quantifying those two compounds one from the other is a key feature. Especially if you want a confidence in your result, you want to have a confident positive or negative result, which you'll give out as a value, and obviously that has implications on if you're working on regulated in a regulated environment on samples, which will then be reported out. So this ability to positively or negatively identify compounds. And further on, when we're speaking about isobaric interferences, the Orbitrap with its high resolution can also identify isotopic patterns. And these can also help you identify compounds and distinguish them one from the other. There's sometimes even just small differences, but these are sometimes key to distinguishing compounds.
Right. I mean, it's like TFA, and I don't remember the other common compound that differentiate also that the TFA is a very toxic compound and the other one is not. I mean, it's quite critical to differentiate those. And Jeff, any words from you about that? And one comment on that is that the Orbitrap right now has, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the better resolution in the mass spectrometry systems, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. It's a very big. It's certainly a very big plus point for the Orbitraps, where we can really turn on its power when needed, and you're right, it allows us to, and we've done a lot of tests with our customers to show them where we'll run our Orbitrap at increasing levels of resolution, and what we'll see is a sort of a lump like this start splitting out into two really nice definable peaks, and that's great to use the power of the high resolution as well. But the other thing, when we are wanting to run these instruments from a routine thing, because if we talk about PFAS again, it's not just one or two samples. The numbers are going up and up and up. That instrument must be stable. It's got to be bomb-proof, right? It's got to be rock solid every single day. And that's the other thing that we need to remember as well, is that the ppm mass accuracy, rather than just the resolution, gives us, sub ppm, gives us that extra confidence as well that, the temperature in the lab isn't going to change, or it still won't matter that much to the instrument. So I think that assurance in data quality is very, very important for us. And to be fair, I mean, Ari and the team in Paris and a lot of our demo chemists, they kind of take it for granted that sub ppm mass accuracy is there, and then they've got hundreds of thousands of resolution to play with, and it's just that's what the Orbitrap gives us, and certainly it's up for a lot of the challenges that we do have. I would say as well, instead of having to add modifications to the front end of our mass spectrometers, which I know in certain things like proteomics sometimes we have to do that, MALDI and things. Certainly for the PFAS, we're not being challenged at all by just our front end mass specs. That's not where we've got the challenge. It's getting the sample and into the mass spec. That's the easy bit, if you like, and then we've got the resolution, the mass accuracy as well, and the software. Let's not forget to pull out compounds of interest, or to really give the user the confidence that that's there at that mass, but what else? Like Ari said, the isotopic patterns and things, so we can be really, really conclusive that PFAS or that compound is that, and it isn't something else. And I think that's a massive plus point for what the Orbitrap brings to the table.
That's great. I mean, allow me a comment on that, because you mentioned the software. I had the opportunity to be in a lab running Compound Discover, and I was amazed because of they were describing me a lot of things that they would need some labs to gain experience with open data, with open software systems, and to do things that takes time or needs huge experience. And I realized that the compound discovery is, first of all, very easy. And second of all, you have access to whatever you do. And even you can identify PFAS clusters, which is amazing, because right now we may talk about 20 compounds, but the next 3-4 years we may discuss about thousands of PFAS. I mean, and this is something that we have to realize. I mean, and this goes to the next question that ORBITRAP has this capability, retrospective analysis. And I need your help here just because I have to understand, and we have to broadcast this to our audience in a very effective way. So if I understand very well, okay, I mean, first of all, retrospective analysis is a game changer because of the ORBITRAP, right? Environmental scientists working on PFAS and micropollutants, and how does ORBITRAP, enable this?
Should I take that one, Ari?
Yeah, sure, you can start.
Yeah, because I can probably, George, give you an example of something really, really cool that happened with a customer using retrospective analysis. I mean, if we talk about environmental analysis, okay, so the especially for PFAS, like you said earlier on, the regulations just keep on changing because nobody really has a good handle on this right now. In the past, when a regulation has come in for some other like European framework or whatever, it's been a number of years before the next one comes in. And it just seems with PFAS, because nobody really has a good hold on it, and there's so many of them, and we're discovering them all the time, that these regulations just keep changing. So the question that people are asking now is, okay, so we've got 40 whatever compounds, and now we're being asked to analyze more. Well, did we see them before? Because it's the same water, right?
Right.
And sometimes if you know what the compounds are that you're looking for, you can treat them, you can deal with them, you can report them. But what if those aren't the toxic ones? What if there's something worse behind? Or what if I've got a method, I can run them, and I don't see the compounds? Well, everything's great. But what about if there's another PFAS compound that's very similar to another one that isn't in the regulations, but is very, very high levels in this water that might be causing us harm? And that's where I think we're at this tipping point where retrospective analysis is going to become regularly required in these labs. I think labs aren't going to be able to hide away from it any longer. And that's good for us because we can do the quantitative capabilities. We've got that, that capability and that accessibility in terms of affordability now, and value and more data per injection that we can offer our customers to help them. So it's an interesting position that we're in, especially when the regulations change again, we're there. So I'll take you back. So we had a customer who he developed a method for in the UK, the 47. There was 47 regulated PFAS, and he developed his method, and he did that all by himself. And it took him a long time. It was really difficult to get all the transitions, all the collision energies just nice, and all the chromatography and all this. And he got it, and that's fine. And he gets it ready to validate. It gets validated. He's ready to go to market with running this, and the regulations change. One more compound.
One more, yeah.
So now he's got to go and do all of this again, or he's got to do that heavy lift. In contrast, we had another customer who had an ORBITRAP from us, and we said to him, "Hey, we've heard about this extra compound," and he said, "Yeah, that was my fault." And I said, "Oh, why was that?" So he had his full scan method for the 47, and he noticed using the software that there's another compound there. That's quite a high amount. I should probably, as a duty of care, report that to the customer. And the customer reported that, and the regulators got involved, and they said, maybe it's always been there, and it had. And that got added to the regulations. But now, if we were just focusing on those 47, that wouldn't have happened. So two things there. One, we were able to see compounds that we didn't expect, or we weren't regulatorily expected or required to look for. But also, secondly, it was so easy to add that extra compound into the list.
Right.
So as 47 goes from, and these guys have had ORBITRAP from when there were 2 PFAS compounds. Then it went to 12 and 20, and then 47 and 48. And we know there's going to be more. They know that there's going to be more. As long as they can get standards and this sort of thing, they'll be always a little bit more ahead of the curve than maybe some other people. But now people are looking at these guys going, what is it that makes them able to do that? And it's ORBITRAP.
Yeah. That's
really
great.
story.
That's great story, Jeff. I mean, that's great. Yeah. Ari, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, just to add to what Jeff said, and was a really interesting story. I know that there are certain customers, for example, who are doing temporal trends, or they really try to understand how these compounds, or these PFAS compounds, are changing over time, what the impact is, and if you have the possibility and the data to allow to go back in time and look at samples you've measured in the past, sometimes it gives you the opportunity to better understand how these compounds evolved, how they maybe are being replaced one by the other. And there's a second aspect which I think is important, is sometimes you have a sample which is really precious. You don't have a big amount. So when you measure it in full scan with the ORBITRAP, you can always go back and look for compounds you've not thought about looking at the time. And sometimes it's difficult to get a hold of a sample at a remote location, or you've done some sediment work in a specific lake or river. So yeah, having the option to do retrospective analysis when you do and go back in time, it's a really powerful tool, I think.
It is. I mean, allow me 2 noob questions about that. All right. First one, this happens because we have the best mass resolution MS system, right? In the full scan. This is the basic reason for that, right? And the second reason, the second question, noob question from my side, is that in case I'm running today a lab analysis from a sample, right, for 47 PFAS compounds, and that's it. But the next year, and I saved all the data, everything is on my PC, and I'm happy about that. The next 2 years, regulation requires, or the regulation or whatever, requires, let's say 100 PFAS. So I have to dig into my data just to look what's happening over there to my system, to my water reservoir or whatever. So there's nothing to do again. I have only to go to my PC and get those data, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
pretty much. You get the you get the exact mass and put it in, and it'll tell you if it was there. There'll be a peak there. Okay.
Amazing.
So it'll give you a good idea of what is there. It won't, obviously, you've not got standards, but so you won't have a fully validated method, but it gives you that option. It gives you that option to do that. And just another example, we were speaking with a consultant, a PFAS consultant, and he had seen some data from his customer, if you like. And it was ORBITRAP data, but it was just the targeted stuff, of course, because that's what the customer wanted. Right. They sent some more samples to the lab that we worked with, and it was really interesting because this consultant, although he's not a full-on mass spectrometrist guy, he's kind of had to get used to the terminologies and this sort of things over the years, because he's getting a lot of consultant work because of PFAS. And what was interesting was that, he sometimes has to go to court or to say, look, this is the remediation that you might need to do because we've found something now and we can go back, and how long has it maybe been there for? And that's massively important for him. He can't just say that was spilled like yesterday. It could have been there for a long, long time. And that helps him. That really, really helps him. But the other thing was, the first thing that comes is, well, is that result right? Are you sure? And the beauty of it is that you can get the exact mass and say, well, it is. But you can then, what is great is there's so much more data behind the exact mass, behind the, you know, the report result of however many micrograms per kilogram or whatever it is, that allows you to challenge the data in multiple ways. You know, let's have a library search. Let's look at the ratios. Let's look at whatever the ORBITRAP data is got, and it might just sit there dormant for years. You might never need to bring it out, but when you do, it's there for you. And then there's the confidence inside that with the power of the ORBITRAP. So it does give us a very good angle to propose this to customers who might not be so sure, when actually we've got consultants saying this workflow to get that data out efficiently and easily is very, very important for him as a consultant, having to make really, you know, multi-million-dollar decisions on the results that are produced by these as well. So imagine that's quite a big thing for him to say, is I really value the depth of data that we can get out of this, but also the meaningfulness of the data as well. So that's another good thing, that isn't just us saying we think ORBITRAPs are great.
You are correct. You are correct about that, because
the supply chain needs to know as well.
Yeah, because this, let's say, 500,000 or 1 million decision is that because, you know, we are always forgotten that PFAS are already there. The micropollutants are already there. I mean, the only thing that changes during this time is our approach as regulation, as a company, as a lab, or whatever. So that means that this, you know, today the whole world right now decided to look after 20 or 47 PFAS. What's going to happen if the next 3-4 years this is going to increase 1,000 or 2,000 PFAS, and they have to do again the complete job, or I don't have any clue about my risk points for my water reservoir or whatever. So this comes to your you know, phrase about the multi-million decision. I mean, this is great. So I also went in the labs, and I think this happens also to you, that they have ORBITRAP technologies for more than 10 years or whatever, and they are still, of course, running, but they're still looking at really trace levels of PFAS. I mean, I have 1 or 2 here in Greece, ORBITRAPs for more than 10 years, that right now they're screening the lakes, the rivers, whatever, and they're giving very good sensitivity and quantitation. So, because those are crucial for, you know, for emerging regulations. Could you please help us how the ORBITRAP dynamic range at mass accuracy outperform traditional approaches in regulatory in PFAS compounds and workflows?
Okay. Ari?
Yeah, sure. I can start with that one. So, George, you mentioned dynamic range. So the ORBITRAP has a really wide dynamic range, or spanning over 5 to 6 orders of magnitude. So what does that mean? It means that you're able to measure a compound or several compounds which are present both at very low levels and high levels in the same sample, in the same analysis. Imagine you're having PFAS in a soil sample, and some of them are present at rather high level, let's say ppb levels. But at the same time, it might happen that you have very low quantities of other PFAS present, let's say in the low ppt range. And with this high dynamic range, it allows you to detect them with quantitatively with high confidence at the same time. And the other aspect you mentioned was mass accuracy. Again, that comes to, we're usually measuring around 1 ppm. And something we've included in our instruments is an internal calibration, which is constantly running with the analysis, allowing you to analyze and have a trace of this mass stability over time, also over longer sequences, if you're running overnight or even over a weekend, without the need to constantly calibrate the instrument.
That's great.
And we're at 1 ppm usually. And this again gives you confidence in your results, avoiding for let's say false positive or negative results. And another thing we introduced is obviously the ORBITRAP technology is based on Fourier transformation, and with that technology, we're really reducing the background of our say signals. We got this really nice and clean peak with a high signal to noise ratio, even if we're looking at complex matrices with let's say lots of interferences.
Like wastewater, you mean, or
exactly
marine
water,
water?
soil. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's great. Jeff,
Yeah,
your thoughts?
Yeah, same. I mean, yeah, we've just been doing a nice piece of work actually on some really not nice samples, let's say, Ari.
yeah.
Not the nicest, but again, we've found low level and high level without any, I would say, when we've done standard addition and this sort of thing to prove that the low level was the low level and prove the high level was the high level, and it is, we can say that the ORBITRAP does stand up because of this mass accuracy, because of the stability and the wide dynamic range, and it can cope quite well with those things. So again, that versatility of that instrument that we do take kind of for granted is great, especially when the game is constantly changing with these PFAS compounds. I think it's interesting as well in food, where maybe the levels might not be so low yet. The beauty of it is that you might have a method where you don't need to get down so low, but you can go lower. That's good. Or obviously on the other side, you might start looking for things in certain samples where you maybe already have a method, but you start getting these samples that are full of PFAS that you don't know. For example, these unknown PFAS that we didn't know. So, for example, we had a customer running some samples for PFAS and weren't finding anything on the regulatory side. But the problem was that these particular compounds that they thought were going to be really, really high, they were being treated, and there was none of that compound at the other side after they treated it. But that's because it broke down into lots of others into a really, really high level. But this was what we were able to see. Again, adding ORBITRAP, high resolution, retrospective, but also this dynamic range where we could get really nice peaks and really nice quantification as well. So again, it's that Swiss Army knife kind of thing where it's like the best screwdriver is it encompasses really an overall good, I would say, user experience, because it's not one of these instruments that's on the raggedy edge of sensitivity or the raggedy edge of resolution or whatever. It stands up every day, which is great.
So while we are talking about all those capabilities, and also know that micropollutants are already over there. I mean, I assume that non-targeting screening is increasing. I mean, the demand for non-targeting or suspect or whatever, I mean, is increasing right now. I mean, and if you are a research lab or academy or whatever, you have to fully equipped for what is on the future, right? So how does an ORBITRAP is a future proof solution for detecting those emerging and unknown PFAS?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, so I can maybe start with that one, if that's okay, Jeff.
Yeah, go for it.
So obviously the ORBITRAP has different scan modes we can rely on for these non-targeted analysis. So we have data-dependent acquisition, we have some data-independent acquisition. And what does that actually mean? So you can look at the entirety of the compounds, you can do some fragmentation, you can do some library search, and then really compare what you got in your sample with what other people have found, what's out there. can confidently compare it. And all of this obviously using our software, as we mentioned before, Compound Discoverer, for example, is really the tool for people using the ORBITRAP to use templates which we've already created. So for a lot of these workflows, for example, PFAS, we have some standardized templates they can use, but they can also personalize them depending on their needs. Add certain functionalities, look for, as you mentioned, for certain plots, for example. There's, for example, a plot called the Kendrick plot, where you're looking for halogenated compounds, which kind of are clearly separated from all the rest, what's in your sample. So you can take advantage of certain chemical properties of compounds to really highlight them in a sample. And then identify the peaks in there.
Okay, so I have all the suite on my hands to do an effective, suspect screening, right? To any kind of sample. Okay. And Jeff?
Yeah, I think when these labs are challenged with lots and lots of different things every day. I worked in a lab for long enough and was challenged, and I never was lucky enough to manage the lab, but I'm sure these guys go to sleep and don't sleep because there's so many challenges. Yeah. So I think the emerging and the suspect, non-targeted, that unknown analysis piece, it's funny. It's a big thing. I would say 10 plus years ago, nobody really wanted to know. Right. Deal with what was on the regulation, and that was it. But I was talking to a few ex-colleagues, and I said, how has the game changed then? Like, tell me, like, what is it now? And they're saying things like, well, the thing is that most of these pesticides and contaminants that we've always monitored, if we find them, we know how to deal with them. So we can change the treatment process, we can dilute the water, we can stop going to a customer's tap or whatever. We can do things, but we can't with we can't when we don't know these other things. So we really need to spend the time on that. But then the lab doesn't get the time to spend on it, if you see what I mean. So having the capability to do this other part of it, this not targeted work, let's call it, whatever that might be, suspect or unknown, whatever. This is coming more and more to the forefront, right. We're even seeing now in the UK, for example, we have these standing committee of analysts, which is like they produce, it's all like people from the water industry. They produce these things called the blue books, which is kind of guidance. It's not the way, but it's guidance on how to approach things. And they have recently just published a non-target suspect screening guidance, because it's going to be such a big, or it is currently such a big thing. So I can definitely see that is the future. And I would also say that speaking to a few customers who are really part within the water industry, let's say, for example, they're looking at this as a way to then design the treatment works of the future, because they take a long time to build as well. It's not like, a house takes a number of months to build, but a treatment works, that's a massive thing. And what they want to know is, well, which compounds are we starting to see, so that when we create the treatment that will affect and help us be better at supplying our cleaner water for our residents nearby. And actually that comes down to data, and it's not a guess. And some of the data comes out of a mass spec. So it's interesting to be part of that supply chain, if you like, and it's really integral. So when you think about it, people are spending lots and lots of infrastructural money and public money at times on these pieces of on these treatment works, where the decisions may be decided by an instrument in a lab. And that's really important to get that right. And that's right.
It is.
That's why we need to make sure that we're always on and always listening to our customers, but also making sure that we've got the technology and the workflows to pivot to some of these big changes.
To what you're saying, I mean, I think the best example right now for requiring, let's say, suspect screening is that TFA is not regulated, at least in European Union. And I think also in UK, it still is one of the toxic compounds. Very hard one because it's releasing in the environment. It's very, very toxic for the human, body. Still is not regulated, but you need to find out over there. Has some, I think, isobaric also compounds as well that, those peaks are, interfering with the TFA. So you still need the best mass spectrometry system in order to do the effective suspect screening. So you know very well the water reservoir, because at the end of the day, this is, I think, is what I'm saying many, many times, is that we may lose the forest. I mean, we're looking for the tree and we may lose the forest. I mean, this is a common phrase for everyone. So that means that we're looking for specific 20 compounds of PFAS. I mean, but we are losing the forest of, bringing tap water very safe and healthy. I mean, this is the message. So allow me a final question to both of you. One sentence. If I'm saying to you, ORBITRAP and PFAS, one sentence for both of you. What does that mean? If I have two words, ORBITRAP and PFAS.
In terms of, I'll go first this time, Harry.
Yeah, sure.
In terms of, if you said that and you were a customer, I would say, probably the most versatile and capable instrument of dealing with your PFAS challenges right now and in the future.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeff. Harry?
I would say it's really, the ORBITRAP for PFAS from A to Z, really from short chain PFAS, long chain PFAS, different matrices, different targeted, untargeted. Yeah.
Great. So guys, I'm very hyped about ORBITRAP, and thank you very much for helping me to remain so. So thank you very much for being here today. I'm really amazed about our discussion. And thank you very much, Ari. Thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate that.
Pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you, George.
Okay. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you.